This is One Bills Live, presented by Kaleida Health.
All right, hour number 2 on a Friday can mean only one thing. Senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell, joining us as he does every week. And his segment is brought to you by Scott Lawnyard. Greg's appearance on the show presented every week by Scott Lawnyard, an official commercial site work partner of the Buffalo Bills. All right, Greg, some changes afoot in the offensive meeting rooms this week in Buffalo. Joe Brady in, Ken Dorsey out. And it's a short week for them, having played on Monday night. What do you believe is realistic in terms of progressive changes to improve the point production and the consistency of an offense that has been very up and down this season?
Yeah, I guess the first thing you have to figure out is what you think the problems are. It's always easy when, you don't score a lot to say, okay, there needs to be a change, because obviously the goal on offense is to score. But to me, it's the why. It's the process. Why is that not happening? And I guess, football teams have to be honest with themselves. And it's always been said that sometimes coaches are not as honest with their own personnel as they are with others. I think I'll give you my overview. I'm not there every day, and obviously, you can go back a number of weeks when they scored whatever it was against the Dolphins, 48, and everybody said they're the best offense in the league. But I've said this for a couple of years. I don't think that this is a highly talented offense in terms of personnel. So to me, when that's the case, you need to be built on scheme and tactics. And, I don't want to sit here and say that, they're predictable. I know some might be saying that. That's a hard thing to know for sure, because you don't know how defenses build their game plans against the Bills. But I think that you have a quarterback that's a playmaker more than a precision player. And at some point, you do need to work toward precision. It's very hard to live in this league just being a playmaker. They've done that well for a number of years. They've won a lot of games. They've scored a lot of points. For whatever reason, that's not working this given season the way that they hoped it would work. So to me, you have to figure out how to I'm trying to think of the right word. It's not simplify. That's not the right word. But you have to figure out a way through your scheming and your concepts to present the clearest picture possible for Josh Allen so that things are defined, so that he can drop back and deliver the football. Because Josh has a tendency prematurely to leave the pocket when he doesn't feel right away that it's comfortable. And I'm talking about with the concept, not with the pressure. I'm talking about with the concept. Right. So you have to do the best job you can of defining it so that when he hits his back foot, he feels, oh, yeah, there's my throw. I'm turning it loose.
We've had a bunch of conversations with you and Dan Orlovsky and other analysts, and we've gone round and round about the difference between Josh being under center and in the shotgun. And his numbers under center are off the charts good. He's like 130-plus quarterback rating. He's got no turnovers.
No sacks.
His yards per attempt is like 12.1. It's almost double what it is out from shotgun. Now, I know they spend it's a smaller sample size. What are we talking about here? Is that a real thing, or are we making too much out of something that's a little more subtle?
Well, I think it's a real thing when you're talking play action, and that's my personal point of view. I think play action is far more effective with the quarterback under center, because I think it takes longer to reach the mesh point. Therefore, it puts a greater mental burden on second-level defenders. They have to wait and see, is that a run? Is that a pass? And by the way, I think one other thing I would mention that goes along with that, by the way, is I think that there needs to be greater synergy between the run game and the play action pass game. I think that is a critical piece of the equation, because you want the defense to feel that it looks the same for the first second and a half, or 2 seconds, that, hey, I don't know if this is a run or a pass because it looks the same. You hear that all the time about the teams that are really good with run action, like the 49ers, like the Rams, when they had Gurley and they ran that that offense. You want it to look exactly the same. But I think, to me, play action under center is more difficult for the defense, and it defines reads and throws more clearly, because what's happening is the quarterback's turning his back. So obviously when he snaps it around, you're asking him to basically find a defender, one read, and let's throw the ball, based on that guy. And maybe if it's not there, you check it down. But I think it defines things much more clearly. Plus, it really helps with protection too.
Right. We've heard also from some people that know what they're looking at, basically say that the Bills need to scheme to make execution easier on the players. In other words, don't have an offense that relies almost solely on the execution level and skill level of the player to win. Use the scheme to facilitate execution for the player to win, so they don't have to be perfect on every single play to actually make a play within the scope of the offense. So with that in mind, scheming matchups, so to speak, James Cook is a guy that I still am not certain has been schemed up to make plays for this offense enough, particularly in the passing game. He gets limited time on the field last week and goes for over 100 yards, 120 total yards from scrimmage. He's in the top 10 in rushing and in total yards from scrimmage, despite playing about half the snaps. Are there ways to scheme a player of his skill set, Greg, into winning situations in the passing game?
I would answer yes. And by the way, Brownie, the way you started, what you just said, is exactly what I was talking about at the beginning. To me, it needs to be more scheme-based. Now, look, football in the NFL is always a game of matchups. Clearly, there are going to be one-on-one matchups at times. That's the way it is. But, I think you have to do a better job through the use of formation, of getting, someone like James Cook, who was, by the way, a terrific receiver in college, and we really haven't seen that in the NFL. I mean, we've seen him make some receptions. Some of them have come on second reaction plays where Josh Allen has moved. But as far as him being a part of the pass game, whether it's offset in the backfield, whether it's through motion or shifting or detached from the formation, we really haven't seen a lot of that. And he is a really, really good receiver. I'd also, again, I don't know what Josh Allen's feeling about this is. Some quarterbacks like it, some don't. But I would love to see more motion in this offense. That's something that, like I said, the quarterback has to feel comfortable with, because the defense will also move at times, and you have to feel you're okay with that. But I think there's a number of things they can do to get players involved, because maybe it's a bold, controversial statement. I don't know. I'm just watching tape, but I hear people all the time, and I watched the game Monday night, obviously, and I heard Joe Buck and Troy Aikman talk about it. To me, I don't think this is a high-level talent offense. I think that it needs to be schemed up, and I don't think they played like that. And I think that hurts. It hurts execution, and it puts way too much of a burden on the quarterback.
Sometimes I would agree, and I'll say this: most teams and coaching staffs in the NFL, their idea is to build their offensive scheme or their defensive scheme around what their players and their roster does best.
Right.
How much of that is because Josh is this kind of unicorn dude? Has it evolved into this where they said, well, this is what we do. We're just going to keep doing it?
I think that, and I don't know how they feel in the building,
right,
but my sense has always been that since that 2-game playoff run a couple of years ago when they lost to the Chiefs, when Josh Allen maybe played the 2 best playoff games that people can remember, that the feeling was that this guy is Superman. And, and he was so ridiculously good in those 2 games. I mean, it was unbelievable that, I think that the feeling is, Josh is going to make it happen for us. And the thing about Josh Allen is, and you guys know how I feel about him. I think he's the most gifted quarterback in the league, but there's certain kinds of gifts. Josh at his core And I believe you have to still work toward this. And I've actually had this conversation with people. Josh, at his core, is not a precision player the way you think of, let's say, a Drew Brees or a Tom Brady or even a Joe Burrow to a certain extent. He's much more of a playmaker. But I think you have to work toward being that way. He's now in his, sixth year? Is that correct?
Yes. That's right.
We know that he can be incredibly special. And by the way, this is no knock on Josh Allen. I mean, it's become in vogue the last couple of weeks to rip Josh Allen. And I think that's silly and ridiculous. The guy is, everybody says, well, he turns it over too much. He's also scored the most touchdowns in the league. People conveniently forget that point. But I think that you still have to work toward him being as efficient as he can be in the pocket. And because you still have to make plays from the pocket in critical situations in games. It can't always be take the snap, leave the pocket, and do something special. That just doesn't automatically happen. And when it doesn't happen, it makes it seem like, well, God, what is wrong with this offense? It's bad. So you still have to keep working toward that. And that's where the scheming, I think, becomes so critically important.
As bad as the Bills' offense has been, it pales in comparison to the Jets, who have much different circumstances to deal with. They have a mangled offensive line, which looks like it's going to have yet another shuffle this week because Billy Turner has already been declared out with a finger injury. So that means Max Mitchell is going to have to kick back out to right tackle, where he is a third or fourth option at best. And they're going to have to figure out who plays right guard with the collection of guys they've just signed in the last week or two. Couple that with Zach Wilson, who on offense has not had a touchdown scored on 36 consecutive drives spanning 11 quarters of football. Greg, how broken is that thing?
I guess we'd view that as a problem, Brownie, wouldn't we? Huh?
A problem? It's a natural disaster.
Well, I will say this. Obviously, I watched them this week. They're a tough offense to watch. First of all, the biggest, I don't want to say the biggest, they've got many, but a big issue for them when you're playing with a quarterback like Zach Wilson is they can't run the ball. The last 4 games, their run game has been really, really bad. And if they can't run the ball, they're not really going to move the ball. I think with Zach Wilson, so much to me is predetermined. I hear people say play to his strengths. Well, it's hard to play to his strengths when he really doesn't see things well. So everything becomes predetermined. He's going to drop back and he's going to throw the ball where the play is designed to go regardless. Also, the thing that really bothers me, and I actually talked with my guys on the matchup in the matchup room here when I watched him yesterday. And again, I'm not there, so I don't know how he's coached. But I was fortunate to be taught the position by guys that really knew the position and taught it with nuance and detail. And he still does not know how to drop back to sync up his drop with the route concepts. And to me, that is inexcusable at this point in his career.
Yeah.
And that just offends my sense of how the position is supposed to be played. It's one thing to miss a throw, or make a bad read. That happens. It's the NFL. But, the first play of the game last week, his first throw, it was his first throw, not his first play, first throw. And he ended up completing the ball to Garrett Wilson. But it was a slant route. And, it's 3-step drop timing. And his footwork was awful, and he made it 5-step drop, and Wilson ended up catching the ball inside the numbers, which is where he shouldn't be catching the ball, and he almost got him killed. It's little things like that affect execution, and that's why it's one of the reasons why this offense is really so bad with the pass game.
I was read an article from Kurt Warner, the quarterback, the 3-time MVP.
Yeah, I know.
And he's
Kurt.
talking exactly about what you're talking about. He says a lot of quarterbacks struggle with the shotgun passing game because under center, it's a 3-step drop, a 5-step drop, a 7-step drop, and those drops coincide with the timing of the routes that designed to get the ball thrown to. So you
Yep.
5-step drop, hitch, and the ball's gone. And by that time, the receiver has run 15 yards, made the break, and is ready for the football or ready for the football to be thrown. In shotgun, that timing is all messed up because the ball gets back there and you're already standing there and you have to wait on all that stuff to happen. And there's the point was, and maybe you've seen enough quarterbacks, and I'll ask you this, are there enough quarterbacks that struggle with that timing? Because, you know what I mean? Because of the shotgun patience you have to have to get the ball quick, and you're already dropped back, I guess is the question, is the point.
And Steve, you know this, and Brownie, you know it as well. All these quarterbacks now that come up are 7-7 guys from the time they're 10 years old.
Right.
So they're sitting in the gun. You don't really get a sense of footwork. I remember a number of years ago having the opportunity to have a great conversation with Troy Aikman, who hated the gun. And the reason he hated it, he said, I get my whole sense of timing and rhythm dropping back from being under center. And if you recall, he was a master at that bang 8 skinny post with Michael Irvin, which you don't see much of in the NFL anymore because you don't see it at the lower levels because it requires such precise timing. Hit the back foot, transfer your weight, deliver the football. A lot of these quarterbacks can't do that. You know, they've never been taught to do that. And Steve, I can see that when I watch tape, even when I watch college quarterbacks and I do my draft work, that's not the way these guys play the position.
That's right.
And, you know, so sometimes it can be hard to teach that to a guy when he's 25 years old in the NFL. But, you know, it's, to me, and I'm a purist because, you know, the guy that taught me quarterback play, and he's considered one of the best ever, and I was so lucky in my career, incredibly grateful, was Bill Walsh, you know, and you know, he's a purist, so he taught me the position. So I think about that when I watch guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The Jets, as we know, have been a bit of a bugaboo team for Josh Allen. We know he turns the ball over a lot to begin with. Against the Jets in particular, in his 10 games played against them, has 17 turnovers, 10 picks, 7 fumbles lost, and just 9 touchdowns. Is there anything that they do in particular? I know you've told us in the past they make everything hard for opposing offenses, but is there anything in particular that would spike the propensity to turn the ball over against them?
I mean, you know, I think back to specific interceptions and I mean, look, you guys remember week 1, those interceptions to me were not the Jets doing anything in particular.
Right.
2 were just Josh throwing it down the field when he shouldn't have. And the other was kind of a flat 7 combination where he was late throwing the ball to, I think it was Gabe Davis and Whitehead cut in front of him, if memory serves me correctly. You know, so I think you're dealing with a defense that is really good up front. And I think the Bills' O-line is probably by NFL standards, just maybe slightly above average. I think they're really good up front. I think they're really smart in the secondary. One thing that I noticed when I watched them is I think Whitehead in particular, and I know he had the 3 picks week 1, but I think Whitehead is a really aware player of understanding based on splits what routes are coming. And that's what you want your safeties to be, but I think he's really, really good at that. And it gets back to the point about the Bills. I don't think they're that multiple with their route concepts. And we'll see what happens with Brady now as the coordinator. I don't know what you can do in 3 days, maybe over time, 3-4 weeks, but they've obviously got some really difficult games coming up. I mean, they play the Bills this week, the Jets this week, and then isn't it the Eagles next week?
The Eagles, and then the bye, and then Kansas City.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, you're dealing with some really difficult defenses to play against, particularly the Jets and Kansas City. I mean, even the Cowboys, they're difficult to play against. So, you know, I'm really curious to see this week because, as Brownie said, the Jets do give them problems, not only schematically, but they have really good players.
They do indeed.
Yeah, they do.
Greg, thanks as always. Appreciate it. We will catch up with you next week.
All right, guys, appreciate it. Thanks.